Hello, this is Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. This is Joe Spica. We're going to begin in a few minutes. The team is logging in now.
Great, thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is Alan Schussman.
Hey, Alan. Welcome.
Hi, thanks.
John Lee, I see you're there. Michael, you're there. Alan, I see you. Adam. And I know Andrew's on the phone. Jen, I see you there.
Penny's here, but I'm still getting logged in.
Okay, thank you, Penny. Malin, I see you as well. Okay, I'm going to go through who I see on the call. So I see Alan, Malin, and Penny, and Jen from the Gora side. Anyone else from the Gora side? From the Capgemini side, we have Andrew, Adam, John, Michael, and myself, Joe Spica. Did I miss anybody? Okay, we'll give everybody another minute because I see some people are dialing in. Penny, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Do we have a quorum? Because I see we have Alan. We don't have Kate or Leah.
We don't have Kate or Leah, but they did accept, so we should wait a minute or two for them.
Sure. Thank you, Penny.
Hi, Kate just joined.
I'm sorry, who was that?
This is
Kate. Hi, Kate. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining today.
Sure.
I am sharing my screen, but there's really nothing much to see other than people joining the invite. We'll basically be having a conversation today.
Okay.
So I think I heard everybody, so I'll go through one more time. Alan, Kate, Malin, Penny. Anybody else from the, and Jen, of course.
Jen is here.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that, Jen. I have you bolded on my list. How could I miss you? Anybody else from the Gora side, Leah, or anyone else? Okay. So with that being said, why don't we go ahead and get started? My name is Joe Spica. This is, and Penny and I are both hosting today. This is our Data and Analytics CX Data Strategy Project interviews. We've met with some of you already. Others are new faces. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Andrew and to Jen.
Hi, everybody. This is Andrew Blackmore from the Capgemini side, and I just want to give everybody a heads up that I am at the airport right now, so I apologize for some of the background noise. I can't seem to find a quiet place, but I'll try to stay on mute when I'm not speaking. Just want to give everybody a quick overview and introduction to the project. So we're taking a look at customer data, specifically in the context of sales, marketing, commerce, and service. So what we want to understand is we know that there are a lot of data initiatives going on across the enterprise, and there's obviously very specific needs for those functions that I just listed off, specific to accounts, specific to individual customer stakeholders on those accounts, and we really want to understand better what the needs are that are currently being unfulfilled for sales and marketing. And I think that that's the big difference between this initiative and some of the other initiatives that have gone on in the past, is that what we've heard is historically many of the customer data initiatives have focused at the account level, Whereas we want to go one level deeper and start focusing on the contacts within the account or the individuals that we're doing business with. And we want to do that with an eye towards enabling future state experiences. So thinking about e-commerce, that you may be doing e-commerce business with one account, but within that account, they could be doing business with 3 different lines of business for Gore. You could have people from procurement or a product engineer all logging in to perform different functions. Right? So because of that, we want to be able to know enough about them to provide those tailored experiences. And the same could be said for making sure that we equip a field sales representative with the right information before they walk into a meeting about content that they've consumed or maybe a service ticket that they've opened that could be relevant to the meeting you're about to have. So we're talking to people across a number of functions and then each of the 3 divisions. So we're focusing on sales operations and Salesforce. We're talking to people from marketing and digital, as well as data management, analytics, and IT to get a really comprehensive view on what everybody feels like is going well, what's not going so well, and really how we can, again, enable those future state experiences for our customers. So, as I mentioned before, my name's Andrew Blackmore. I'm the engagement manager for Capgemini, looking across a lot of the CX-related delivery that we are doing, and I'm joined by a number of my colleagues that represent, business analysis and data functions on our team, looking to work with you. So, Jen, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
No, but there's a lot of activity going on in that airport.
Sorry.
So is it Kate, Alan, and Leah that we have from the medical team on this call?
You have Kate and Alan. I'm not sure if Leah has joined or not.
Okay, well, I'm sure she'll be with us shortly. So Kate had already sent a question kind of asking who we were talking about when we were talking about customers. So I think Andrew did a nice job of talking to, referencing that we're looking into the stakeholders or the individuals and their relationship back to accounts or the larger entity. So I think that's the frame that we're taking, and where there hadn't been work before. But did you have any immediate questions before we got started with the interview questions?
Yeah, I do. I think my question is sort of one for context. I'm not sure if I have a clear picture of the sort of deliverables that you're headed towards with this engagement, and my uncertainty there has to do with, I think that probably affects the way we frame things that are useful. We can probably do that better with a better understanding of what the sort of outcome product or projects that you all are working towards are going to be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me try to take a quick stab at that. So I would put the deliverables for this project into 2 discrete work streams or categories. So the first one is the more strategic view on understanding customer data across the divisions, how it needs to be utilized by sales, marketing, service, and commerce. And as an output for detailing that, there's a couple of levels. So the first one is really making sure that from a data perspective, we do a good job of capturing the definitions of customer and customer stakeholder from each of the divisions, right? I know that everybody does business in a different way, and that there are definitions across all 3 divisions. So looking to be able to speak about this in a way that resonates across the enterprise is something that we're working towards. I think the more tangible deliverables pertaining to data and to systems will be a future state architecture for how we provide things like a transitional MDM or a system of record for customer across sales and marketing, in addition to providing functionality that may be a little bit more forward-facing. I'm sorry for the noise here. I'm actually going to take off my headset and see if that helps. So we'll have this future state architecture, as well as having scoped the data within each one of the systems. So I think one thing that a lot of organizations often struggle with is that they may have an MDM system, a CRM, You have marketing tools like marketing automation and CDP platforms, but if it's not clear which system owns what data and what data resides within each system, often organizations struggle to utilize them. So we want to create that data scoping across each platform, and then kind of above all of this, provide some recommended governance functions specifically within sales, marketing, service, commerce. So understanding that the enterprise has a data governance function, it at some point in time will be working towards a master data management around customer. We want to provide the slice of that that is relevant to sales and marketing, knowing that you need to move faster, be a little bit more nimble and flexible than maybe other parts of the organization that are processing transactions. So then, I guess, getting a bit more tactical, there is a piece of this initiative that is really looking to identify where we can start and detailing out a bunch of development-ready requirements so that out of this strategy project, it's not let's go away and solicit requirements for the next 3 to 4 months. It is let's put a team in place to start taking action, whether that's on helping to better enable scalable commerce or enable automated marketing campaigns. We'll figure out where the readiness is highest and look to provide an action plan there. So does that help?
Yes, I think that it does. I think I'm still left with a question of from the Gore side where our intent goes in terms of next steps. And I think, you alluded to, you referred to MDM, to CDP, to some things that I think we would expect around governance and process and stuff. And so I guess this is an internal question, and Malin, maybe this is looking more to you. Are our next step plans that this folds into like enterprise MDM project or CDP and where are those things being driven? I guess I'd throw that out as a pretty general kind of question, knowing that maybe there's not an answer here right now, but I think from at least our perspective here, that would be where we'd be really interested in understanding next, like where does Gore go next with this plan, I guess, would be a general question. And maybe we can't answer that now, but I think that's at least what I'm wondering.
Yeah, this is Malin, Alan. So the intent, as Andrew describes rightfully, is to start to frame some of those things up from an MDM perspective for us. It is an inform to the enterprise, but it isn't necessarily going to essentially have all the sponsorship to make it enterprise, right? I think the enterprise piece still has to be championed, has to have a few other champions signed up for it. But the consideration of this work was, let's start to really understand the data we need around customer to provide the experiences we would like to turn on in our environment for sales and marketing over the next 2 years, understand what's already been done and in work in progress, but also understanding the gaps we need to make sure we're assessing against the the marketing initiatives that are also planned. Then inform that in terms of potentially setting up some type of transitional MDM capability to support those things specifically, or at least come up with a plan of whether that's a viable viable outcome for the organization in the transition period from now until when there's actually an enterprise champion for a true customer date MDM for the whole enterprise. So that's kind of where we are on this in this effort. So it is an inform. It's not the full-on enterprise answer, though. Hopefully that makes sense. Alan?
Yeah, that does help. Thanks, Malin.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that we're realizing more and more as we speak to larger groups of stakeholders is that there are a lot of initiatives around customer data within the enterprise, and we want to hear from the different divisions what initiatives may be ongoing that we need to get closer to, because we really want to ensure that we're not duplicating efforts and that we have these things in mind as an input to the process. Right? So we've heard about some of the initiatives going on in MPD at a high level. But I think as we start to understand them a little bit more deeply, that will help us an awful lot inform either what is working for MPD and is that something we can scale out to other divisions, or do we just need to understand how whatever solution we put forward maybe lives in harmony with that solution.
Great.
Okay. So I want to turn it over to Adam to have him start asking some questions. But before we do that, I don't think everybody on the phone has met the Gore folks in previous meetings. So do you guys mind just giving a quick introduction for us?
Sure. I guess I'll go first. This is Alan Schussman. I'm with Gore out here in Flagstaff, and my commitment is as part of our MPD commercial analytics team, that team oriented to our sales and marketing functions. My specific commitment is around our data, our tools, our kind of trajectory for analytics capability within this function.
And I'm Kate Austin. I'm also on our commercial analytics team. I'm supporting the U.S. field primarily, the clinical sales team, so all four of them, doing territory design and reporting solutions and whatever ad hoc things that they need to grow their business.
Great. Thank you. Adam, do you want to get us going?
Sure, I definitely can. So thank you for the questions, Alan. I think actually you're the first participant in these discovery meetings that have really been engaged as to where this is all going. So I think that was a really great context for everybody on the call. I think really what we're looking to do with this discovery interview for both you and Kate is really to simplify it, understanding the day in the life currently, but then also looking forward and talking about some of those future state needs and future state desires that will make sure that your teams have what they need moving forward to meet a lot of the goals that Andrew and Malin were just speaking to. So you were just talking about platforms and your role in determining those and managing those. Could you speak to some of the platforms that your team is using currently?
Sure. Platforms may be generous. A lot of our current capability is sort of ad hoc infrastructure that has become part of our strategy so far. So, and tell me if this is not the sort of right level of detail. So we are using, my team in particular is using a lot of data that's managed in a SQL database as well as in our enterprise and Gore data warehouses. A lot of bringing together of various pieces of that data in order to do some ad hoc reporting, but a fair amount of ad hoc reporting, but primarily a lot of that work in service of a couple of user-oriented tools that do things like visualize market opportunity information compared to sales information for our field sales and sales leaders.
And what are some of the data sources? Sure, keep going.
Data sources going into that. Sure. Data going into that are we buy procedure information from a vendor, and that gets transformed through a modeling process to with another vendor to produce a sort of estimated total market in our various footprint areas. That gets visualized against sales information. This is done baseline at the account level, so we can show at a given account our estimate of, say, the total number of EVAR procedures that we think are done at that account annually versus our sales at that account, for example. The gap there could be potential opportunity for our sales folks to explore. That information, of course, can be rolled up to region or to territory or those kinds of things.
And just to be clear, when you're saying visualized, I'm thinking the literal sense, like a tableau or something like that. Are you speaking visualized in the sense? Okay.
Yeah, we do. We have all of the capability right now that we have to sort of distribute views of this information is handled by another vendor partner who develops and hosts the visualization tool that presents out this information for us, and that's a Tableau-based platform.
Okay, one of the feedbacks we've heard.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So totally keep going.
I was just going to say we're in another engagement with another vendor partner right now to develop a new also Tableau-based tool that will do some visualization and analytics around our pricing and contracting, as well as some new sales support capability as well. So a lot of vendor provision of Tableau solutions based on data that we're feeding to them is kind of our operating model right now.
Does a lot of that stuff, I know you said that vendors are creating it, but does it live within the Gore walls, I guess, if you will? Like, is that something that Gore owns and can build on in the future, or is that something that is owned and hosted at the vendors?
It's hosted by the vendors. Currently, our relationship is we're pushing data updates to them that get incorporated into the data models that they've built and then rendered in the Tableau front ends. At least with our new engagement, we've been very upfront about the expectation that everything they build is ultimately ours, and we would like to pivot into delivering that capability independently when we're able to. So it's a little bit of sort of yes to both of those questions. Right now we're reliant on those vendors. We would like to have more of this capability be independent from a relationship like that.
Okay. And all of the data, though, is data that do you own the data, or do you have kind of a license that allows you limited use over a certain time period?
Some of the data is licensed. So the procedure information that we license, for example, we have an agreement that stipulates the uses that we can put that data to. And so there are some limitations on that. We don't own it outright. We have we get that procedure data from a company called DRG. DRG is actually the host for that particular solution. So we get data from them. We transform it through an arrangement with another vendor, and then we bring it back to DRG, and they produce and host this visualization for us. Beyond the walls of that relationship with DRG, we do have to be pretty specific about where we take that data and what we do with it, that particular data source.
Okay.
That's inclusive. Do they provide, hey Alan, this is Mailing it, do they provide you customer data as well? Do they fill out pieces of customer for you in that relationship, or just and by that I mean the actual details around the customer, not necessarily the actual cases?
So in the data that we get from DRG is some customer specific information, because they're giving us, for example, affiliations. Part of this data set is affiliations of physicians with hospitals. So we're getting some lens into who are the physicians by virtue of that information. A lot of the other physician level information we get from other sources. We do some web scraping, for example, to get things like publications and clinical studies that physicians are on, those sorts of things. But some of the affiliation information, for example, does come from DRG by virtue of the fact that procedure information is aligned by physician and account.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And can you speak to some of these visualizations and what are some of the decisions that they are driving from an opportunity standpoint? Is it something, and I'm going to make this really simplistic, but is it something like suddenly we see in the graphics that a certain type of heart valve procedure has spiked in the LA region, and now more resources should be allocated towards that. Like, what are some of the things that this data is driving from an opportunity standpoint?
So I think that's a pretty good use case. We would look for things like that. Kate probably has some insights into some of this as well. The sort of classical case that has driven a lot of interest in this particular tool was that with this tool, they made a realization that there were a high number of procedures of particular types being done at places where we had very little presence. And so that represented a whole bunch of opportunity for us. And so we can, and the nature of the visualizations generally are, just a bar plot of, our sales compared to what we believe are a number of procedures at an account, or, at a different levels of granularity.
So is this potentially driving like the inventory management then at those hospitals?
I don't think at this time it's driving that kind of activity, although Kate, you may have a better idea. I think it's informing things like territory design, but I don't think it's speaking to inventory specifically yet.
Yeah, I don't.
In part because
I don't think we would use it for that. It doesn't go down to that level. It's just like these are the number of EVARs, these are the number of TVAR procedures. It doesn't tell you what size of devices that you need, which is really what you need for inventory management purposes.
Got it. And I know this is getting incredibly detailed, so we don't need to keep going down this path, but is that information that is potentially available and just not purchased today, or is this really the depth of the data that's available that you've seen on the market right now?
You mean that detailed information about say, device sizing?
Right.
No, I don't think there's generally a general source for that. We are going to get more information on that as we implement a case support and inventory management tool that will help us get a better understanding of things like device sizes used, how that relates to inventory and that sort of thing. But there's not that I'm aware of a general industry source of that kind of data.
There is at a regional level. It doesn't go down to the account level, but I can look at things like market share and market size based on a specific item number.
Does that? Oh, that's in that regional DRG data, huh?
Yeah.
Because it's actually got the item survey. Yeah, that's right.
Yep. It just doesn't go down to the account level, and we can tell from our sales data what a particular account is buying, and we do use that to make calculations as to what we think they should be storing in their consignment. But a lot of that is just kind of based on overall usage of that region, what sizes seem to be used most commonly, what types of cases that they're going to be doing, and what type of item number is usually used in that case.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, so we've spoken a little bit about identifying opportunities. Can we speak a little bit about, now that the opportunities have been identified, how you're tracking the success of that? Because I feel like that wouldn't obviously be captured in this type of data that you're purchasing necessarily. It may inadvertently be part of that as you're more successful within each hospital or region, and being part of those procedures, but it's definitely more of identifying those opportunities. So from identifying those opportunities and now sort of forecasting what you want to go after for a region, how are you tracking that data? And what I'm getting at too is that I feel like from our previous discovery meetings that a lot of data is tracked in field with the associates that are on the ground. That they're, so I'm trying to determine sort of how they're now tracking those identified leads moving forward.
Well, each FSA typically creates a territory plan at the beginning of the fiscal year what accounts they're targeting and what the expected result is. And then throughout the year, I provide reports that show if they're on track to what they expected or if they're not. And that's something that we're going to include in an automated fashion with this engagement that we're working on with the other vendor, but right now it's something manually that I have to do.
Is that tracked in Salesforce or some
Nope.
other CRM?
Nope. It's Excel spreadsheets, and if you have the occasional FSA that embraces Salesforce, it might be in there, but most of them are pretty reluctant to use that, and so they have it written down somewhere, and they've agreed upon it with their sector leader, and that's pretty much the only way that you can get it.
How often is that type of spreadsheet that is tracking the forecasting and the goals for that associate updated? Did you say yearly, quarterly?
It depends on like the sector leader, how much they really push on it. I think for the more data-driven ones, I update it monthly to quarterly, and for the ones that maybe don't care as much, it's basically just the end of the year.
And just given your anecdotal opinion, what is some of the hurdles around adopting something like a Salesforce or something that is more geared towards managing those types of opportunities in a more living way?
It's the way that you have to input it into Salesforce is very cumbersome. If it was easier, I think they would be more willing to do it. And also Salesforce doesn't have any sales data in it right now. So all you can really get out of it is you put in the number which you expect, and you would still have to look at an external data source to be able to tell how you were tracking to that.
And I think what we've heard in other conversations, and let me know if this is accurate, is that certain geographical regions have a challenge with the interface being in English and only in English. Is that accurate?
I'm not as knowledgeable about that because I mostly do the U.S., but I'm not surprised that would be a hurdle. From a U.S. perspective, the hardest part about it is when you're going through the funnel, I think it even has it forecasted down to an item number level, which is really just not super useful to do, and they don't really know how to do that, and so they'll have trouble with that. And then the way that the recurring opportunity is set up is a little bit confusing, and so they just don't want to try because they get confused when they input things into it.
That makes sense. So data is residing obviously in a variety of spreadsheets locally. How is that data then taken and then recompiled and reported upon for the larger division and the larger regions? Is that still just a continued manual process, or is there something that now this data is inputted back into some type of reporting system or tool to then, again, kind of forecast and report on the larger teams outside of just these individual spreadsheets?
We don't really sum it up to sectors or regions. There's an overall financial forecast number that they're expected to hit at a region level, and that is actively tracked in our Cognos system, and everyone kind of reports on that. And then the message out to the field is figure out how you're going to achieve this growth, and we don't necessarily care the details of how you're going to do it, just do it. And as long as we're hitting that overall forecast number, I don't think it really comes up to then go down to an account level and see what accounts did they say that they were going to target that we're not doing as well. That's kind of all just managed locally with the sector leader and the FSA.
Do you have a question, Andrew?
Well, I was just, and this is taking us in a little bit of a different direction, but I want to just make sure that as we're going along, my assumptions are accurate, which is that all of this from a sales perspective is really being focused on at the account level. So all of those individual physicians that may be contacts within the organization, or even folks that may sit in executive positions rather than inform larger purchasing decisions. I guess I'm just trying to figure out, with all of this data focused at the account level, I'm assuming that there's not a whole lot of attention paid in Salesforce currently within MPD to the contacts. Is that accurate, or am I making a bad assumption?
Well, I would say FSAs think about opportunities in terms of the physician that they then roll up to an account. And the sector leaders also probably thinking opportunity is a physician. But anyone above that is looking at accounts, and anyone in Flagstaff is probably looking at accounts, because we don't have a robust system right now that links hospital to the physician. So when you're looking at sales numbers, you pretty much are always looking at an account level.
At accounts.
Okay, got it. So then
I think I'd add to that just that I think that is sort of a pain point for us, in that we would, when we get, say, this annual or maybe biannual update of something like procedure data, there's a fair amount of work to do to reconcile the updated mappings of physicians to accounts. And so one pain point for us that would be, I think, remedied by a better management mechanism would be something that would enable that process to be a less manual process, for example. So agreeing with everything that Kate is saying, I think we would still benefit a whole lot from better sort of data management of that customer record, to know the affiliations of physicians, have a good method for making updates to that in a centralized place. I think we'd get it, along with other information about the physician, right? Other affiliations, specialties, clinical studies. You know, there's lots of stuff that informs our understandings of physicians that at a day-to-day basis in Flagstaff we may not be paying a lot of attention to, but for example, marketing strategies are really dependent on, or product rollout strategies are really dependent on. So there is a lot of need to have access to that information and to be able to manage it and make updates to it. And right now we spend a lot of time on that activity that it would be great if we could improve.
Got it. So then, and I just want to restate the beginning part of that to make sure that I'm accurate again in my understanding, which is that it sounds like if the FSAs, the folks who are managing this stuff on the ground, are focused at the individual physician level, then those who have actually adopted Salesforce at least do keep those contacts relatively clean within Salesforce. Is that an accurate assumption for the subset of people who are more savvy Salesforce users?
Yes.
I don't know. You think so, Kate?
When they name opportunities, and so because opportunities have to be at an account level in Salesforce, what you'll see them do is they go to the account, and then under the opportunity, they're actually naming it the physician's name, and then the product line, because there's also going to be different opportunities depending on the product. So that's the naming convention that the good ones are using, but it's really a very, very small subset of FSAs that are doing that, and I would say the majority have probably the first opportunity that they were required to put in there when they were trained, and then nothing since then.
Okay, so then even though there is a lot of great contact level information, that's the stuff that is predominantly trapped in spreadsheets.
Yeah, and that should change also a little bit with the inventory management system that we're implementing, because with that system you'll be able to submit electronic stock dispos, and you include the physician information, and the data feed for that is whatever's in Salesforce. So as they want to be able to submit POs, they're going to have to update physician records in Salesforce so that they are able to select them to be able to submit to get paid. So it will drive updating Salesforce hopefully a little bit, and then we'll see what happens later, if the systems will be able to talk to each other, or how that's going to work. but that's going to be coming in the next couple of months that I think we're going to get much better data quality in Salesforce contacts.
That's great. And Jen, not to put you on the spot, but if the data quality on those contact records in Salesforce were to be significantly improved, I believe that that's a pretty beneficial step for the marketers. Is that, am I missing something critical?
As long as the relationship is in there, so I think if the contact is cleaned up, it'll be good. But there's almost, unless they really update the information that's on that contact record in medical, I don't know how useful it's going to be for targeting, for marketing. So they could clean it up.
Yep.
They could start to put in, it's like really shallow. So they're still going to need to augment it. But yes, it's a great first start.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say this is one of the first initiatives across the divisions that we've been speaking to that actually seem to capture at least some focus on that individual contact level. So that's what kind of got my ears perked up here.
And this question might be a little bit too far into the weeds, but it's me trying to wrap my head around how some of this is tracked. So definitely cut me off if this is not a great question. But when tracking to the contact level, when tracking to the doctor level, my understanding is that a lot of work goes into place to obviously be trained on these products. Once they're trained on these products, they are typically very brand loyal. And so how is it tracked currently around what they've been trained on, how that communication is taking place to try to engage them to be trained on things? Is that all in the spreadsheet as well? How's that functioning currently?
No, that's not in the spreadsheet. There is a separate training team within medical that keeps track of everyone who is trained, and I know that's part of the struggle is that a physician might be doing cases and then never officially get signed off. And it's also a big request from the sales associates and the leaders to have that training status included in Salesforce so that they can see who is actually signed off and who is not, because it could be someone that they thought would have been signed off years ago, but the paperwork never actually happened.
And Kate, is it right? Like right now, there's no connection between I don't know if they still call it LLTS, but that whole team and the rest of our sort of world of data. As far as I'm aware, they're pretty separate, right?
Yeah, I've never used that database. I don't actually know where it is.
Yeah.
And is that type of data just something that historically has been something that Gore's tried to maintain themselves with the information that associates are gathering, or is that something that you think is purchased through an outside vendor?
I think it's all internal.
Yeah, it's a formal process. They have certain paperwork that they have to fill out to prove that a physician did the training cases, and they're supposed to send that to the training team, and then they maintain all of the training records. And then there's just a gap of the training cases and then getting the information.
And again, this might be out of the scope of your commitments, and so if it is, definitely we can move on. So around that data, is there any type of marketing automation or anything like that? And I'm simplifying the process, but say I'm a doctor and I'm like 2 steps away from getting certified for this particular type of heart valve. Is there any type of automation or anything leveraging that data to drive send them an automated email or reminder or anything like that to continue them down that process? Is that something that you would see beneficial in a future state, and I don't know where the legal boundaries also with some of this lobbying and stuff like that comes into play too.
I'm not knowledgeable about that at all. I would be shocked if that exists.
Yeah. Yeah, same. I don't think that there's something automated like that. That kind of training and stuff is often really ramped up early in the launch of a product where clinical specialists and field sales associates and others will be really, really heavily engaged with early folks who they want to be like early adopters. I think that's a very manual, high, just person-to-person engagement kind of process, though, and that data ultimately comes around that, certification to use the devices comes back into that system. But I don't think there's any kind of push from that system that, carries someone along their, development journey or whatever.
Got it.
So, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to dig in a little bit, and I know this is bringing us full circle back to the first part of the conversation we were having, but you mentioned a couple of tools from a reporting and analytics perspective that are being implemented or are currently implemented by external vendors. I just wanted to get a sense for the analytics team within MPD, how much of, I guess, the actual work is focused on coordinating data and kind of pulling things manually versus building out reports and automated reports versus doing deeper analysis and building models? I know you said everything was very manual at the beginning, and then I feel like we went down a few roads and never got into this.
I guess to some extent it's a question of sort of current state versus a desired future state. We do spend quite a bit of time in that sort of data management space, in particular right now where we're bringing up some things, preparing, getting data prepared, delivering it, figuring out what a data pipeline is going to be like. The future state that I would like us to head towards is one where we are more independent in being able to design and deliver analytics tools that are useful, as well as more sophisticated in the kinds of analytics that we can do. A lot of what we're doing right now is sort of operational. I would like us to get to a place where we're doing more forward-looking, more sophisticated kind of analytics, and trying to figure out what is a path to getting there. Some of it is going to be based on tools. Some of it is going to be based on capability and just room to develop into those areas. Is that getting to the intent of your question?
That's actually, that's perfect, right? That's exactly what we want to understand, which is where we are now and where we're looking to go. I think maybe a question around this, because I think typically there's two barriers to being able to have an analytics team doing more analytics and less data management. One of them is data quality and how much cleanup is involved, and the other is how integrated the systems are. And it sounds like right now the integration piece, or even the lack of having things in systems versus spreadsheets, is a challenge. But how is the data quality? Do you spend a lot of time doing data quality cleanup?
So the sales data is very good. It's very easy to pull that and join that with other things. In terms of bringing in the procedure data, it's sometimes tricky because the procedure data has different account names and different primary keys to be able to join it. So there's some time spent being able to do that, but it's not terrible. I would say the biggest manual effort is just all of the data sources are separate, and then joining them together is going to take the most time. And then once you've got that join, the data's okay.
Is that joining process manual each time, or are there set reports that are the tried and true reports that go out monthly or quarterly?
There's
sales reports that go out monthly, but anything that you want to combine the sales data with the procedure data is something that I would have to do manually every time I want to provide that report. And I have my own ways of being able to automate that, but that is all like Excel-based VBA code, and it's not really what you want it to be, which is what we're working with other vendor on, is bringing all these data sources together with this ad hoc data layer that then we could have canned reports and also be able to create new reports much, much easier.
Alan, you were going to say something?
Yep. No, I mean, I agree with what Kate said. I think the only thing I'd add is the place where we have to do new effort routinely is when there are significant updates to the data set. So, for example, a bunch of physicians move from one account to another, and we have to figure out how to handle that. Or hospital systems come and go; they eat up other hospitals. We have to, manage those affiliations and things. And so that's quite a bit of kind of manual reconciliation that has to get done. So it's a little bit of yes to both. There is a fair amount of that work to do. It tends to come on a cadence though, so it's not every single time. But when there are significant changes, there's quite a bit to do. That process, fortunately, the person on my team who really drives that stuff is really good at it and really understands the process well. But it's still a lot of work on his part.
That's really useful, and this is maybe again kind of a broad question here, but I think one of the feedbacks we've heard from other calls is that Tableau and some of these visualization tools are very powerful. They can tell a really strong narrative, and because of that, it's very easy, not from a malicious way, but a very easy way to tell the story you want to tell with the data. Can you speak to any of data governance or any type of procedures that really make sure that what's being visualized, what's being reported is the, again, lack of a better term, like tried and true methodologies? It sounded like a little bit like, Alan might have a certain way of doing things, Kate might have a certain way of doing things. You may end up at the same place at the end of the day, but there's no, for some of this, there's not that rigid governance. So could you speak a little bit about the governance that's in place and around the data quality in that sense? Or is that just more of a rhetorical thing and it's just, that could happen, that's true?
I think on our team, we do have a really high level of understanding that we need to be clear about what the data means when we're giving it to folks, and that when people ask us for things, that we understand that request so we can give them the right answers. There are definitely folks in the organization who will take a report that we give them and run with it, and maybe they run in the wrong direction because they don't understand the guardrails or they don't understand the nature of the data. I think we work pretty hard to communicate those things. I don't think there's a formal kind of guidance process. There are some processes in the data kind of collection phase of some things where we're pretty specific about what we're getting and what it means. For example, we have to define annually what categories are going to make up the procedure buckets that we put that data into. That's a real collaborative process with sales and with marketing and with our product folks and others. And then we have to be able to carry that understanding forward. So there's a little bit of a kind of governance process there. Not quite sure if it's in the vein of sort of like problem governance, the way I think you're asking about. I think overall we just try to be transparent and upfront about the limitations of the data that we have, and try to guide where we can to make sure that no one is kind of running off the rails with it.
Yeah, and I think that from everything we've heard, that medical does have far and away the most mature analytics function. So that's great to hear, but it's also, I think, what I would have expected just from some of that information we've gotten up front.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep, and that made total sense. and to Andrew's point, I definitely agree as well. I was just curious around how that plays out and how that care is taken. So we have about 5 minutes left. I know, Andrew, you're in a tough spot there, location-wise. Do you have any last-minute questions before we drop?
I actually don't. I think that this is, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for taking the time. We're taking a really broad swath of input for this project, and it's extremely helpful, I think, to get input from the part of the organization that does have a more mature analytics function. Because as much as we're focused on activating this data at the experience level, I think customer insights and being able to power the organization through analytics will really help and go a long way in making those experiences better and making, field sales more effective, et cetera. So I'm good on the question front, but thank you for your time, and I do appreciate that. So thanks, Adam.
Great. Jen, did you have any follow-up questions for Alan and Kate?
No, I didn't. I thank you for the time. I actually feel like there's a lot more that we could keep talking about because you guys are doing so much. So I appreciate your time, and if anything else comes up, we'll shoot those over. And Leah's on the phone now too, so we can hopefully shoot those over through Leah.
Oh, great. Yeah, in fact, I wanted to make sure we got to at least mention some of the things that are more, because in the marketing function where Leah is, there's a lot of more interesting kind of analytics work being done, particularly by a vendor to do things around segmentation and sort of physician journey and stuff like that. So those are really, really good use cases for the data once we have it that are worth having some understanding of.
And Leah, maybe let me just ask this question: Do you have a hard stop at 4? I think on the Capgemini side, we would gladly stay on and listen if you had a few minutes to tell us about that.
I actually do. I have some time tomorrow if you want to try again, just a more intimate discussion. But I do. Today is pretty crazy. I do have a hard stop at 1, and I apologize for being for the meeting.
Oh, no worries at all. So I think if we can maybe coordinate a little bit through Penny just on calendars, we'll do everything we can to make our calendars line up with yours, because we would definitely love to hear about that.
Great. I'm happy to do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Everyone.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sophia.
Bye-bye.
Bye.